war veteran by the name of Scott Olson was viciously attacked by the police, and as a matter of fact, he ended up in the hospital with a brain injury. But he's getting better. At the last mobilization, he said a few words. He spoke at the last time we marched to the port. But on that day, this march that brought together vast numbers of people who basically took to the streets. And what was so incredible was that there were no cops. It was the first time in my entire life that I participated in such a massive demonstration, and I couldn't find the police. As a matter of fact, the cars that were forced to stop, most of them honked their horns in solidarity. They were glad to wait until the march went by. It was the first time in my life that I participated in such a demonstration when I didn't really feel afraid, when I didn't expect that something might happen that would produce violence. It was a multiracial, multi-generational, multi-sexual, multi-gender, and there was a kind of infectious happiness. And I remember that many of the people of my generation, and we were talking about generationalities here, many of the people of my generation, when I saw them, they would say, "Angela, it's happening finally." I think we felt pretty much the way June Jordan formulated the conclusion to her poem, which is called Song for South African Women. She said, "We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are the ones we have been waiting for." Now, during Obama's campaign for the presidency, he used that phrase. Do you remember him saying, "We are the ones we've been waiting for"? Although I don't think he credited June Jordan. He should have said, as prominent black feminist poet June Jordan said. But there was truth to that statement, because Obama would not have been elected had not vast numbers of young people who refused to believe that it was impossible to elect a black man who identified, as he told us he did, with the black radical tradition of struggle. They refused to believe that that was impossible. And the black communities everywhere initially supported Hillary Clinton because they didn't believe that Obama was electable. I mean, this was just 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that he was represented as an unelectable candidate. And I think it's important to point out that just as those who joined the Occupy movement raised what might appear to be impossible demands, young people with all the new modes of communication made it possible for us to believe in the election of someone like Barack Obama. Now, the problem was that too many people projected all of their hopes and all of their dreams on one man. And somehow, even those of us who are sophisticated activists, we came to believe that by electing Barack Obama, there would be radical transformations of the United States of America. And I think we forgot that we were electing a president of the United States of America. Disappointment. And I'm disappointed. We're all disappointed. I'm disappointed about the puny health care bill, about Guantanamo, Afghanistan, about the failure to pass the DREAM Act, about about the continued demonization of immigrants, about the persistence of the Obama could have intervened when Troy Davis, he could have used the same. But we also have to remember that he is, after all, President of the United States, and he does, after all, represent U.S. empire. But let's remember George Bush. I mean, the point that I'm making is that the Occupy movement would not have been possible under George W. Bush. And I think that in a sense, those who came together in the Occupy movement are the same people who refused to believe it was impossible to elect Barack Obama. It's just that that movement came about 3 years too late. It should have emerged immediately after the inauguration. And we should, and I'm holding myself responsible as well. All of us, we should have been out there in the streets putting pressure on Obama, forcing him to close down Guantanamo. We could have done what Dr. King suggested. We could have gone to Washington and we could have said, we are going to stay here until you close the doors to Guantanamo. Now, I guess the point I'm making is that we have to be careful about this upcoming election. It's very, Romney is very scary. And Newt Gingrich, where is he coming from? I've recently visited Palestine and am doing work that tries to link the prison abolitionist movement with the use of carceral technologies in occupied Palestine. And so when I heard Newt Gingrich the other day saying that, well, the Palestinians don't really exist, they are an invented people. I mean, if anybody's invented, it's those people who call themselves Americans. But anyway, I have to wind down. So I want to make the point that when we speak about economic injustice, we need to be attentive to what has come to be called intersectionality, thanks to the work of women of color feminism. We can conceptualize issues not as discrete, disconnected issues whose relationship we have to mechanically orchestrate, but rather as issues that are already in cross-hatched, overlaid intersectional patterns. I'm talking about class and race and gender and sexuality and ability and the environment and all other social relations. They're not simplistically separate. They will never remain uncontaminated by each other. So when the OWS movement appeals to the 99% constructed in relation to economic criteria, we are already aware that class hierarchies that produce this economic differentiation between the super rich and the rest of us are already shot through with gender and race and sexual hierarchies. There are those who say that the OWS movement has been successful thus far because they say economics transcend race. But economics don't transcend race. They're enabled by and reflect racial hierarchies. Everybody may be hurting, but there's clearly a racial differential. And so if Occupy activists and their supporters understand how envisioning, linking the remarks I made earlier about prison abolition, linking the abolition of prisons to economic freedom It can help us envision a radically different society. We can talk about housing and healthcare and education and jobs in a society without racism, without misogyny, without homophobia, without transphobia, without ableism, a society that does not depend on the destruction of the environment to produce profit, a society that does not inflict such cruelty on animals in the industrial production of food. We would also begin to understand what it really means to challenge the banks, what it really means to stand up to the financial institutions, including the World Bank and the IMF. And we would reflect on the term that is being used to characterize this new movement, the Occupy movement. And we would understand that we must disassociate it from the colonial occupation of this country, which inflicted such genocidal violence on indigenous people. And we would have to speak out against the occupation of Puerto Rico and against the occupation of Palestine, where carceral technologies produced by the overuse of prisons affect everyone who lives there, in prison or on the outside. And so I want to conclude by suggesting that envisioning the abolition of prisons and of the prison industrial complex, we can envision a new time, a new temporality, a new world. After all, as the Black feminist poet June Jordan wrote, we are the ones we have been waiting for. Thank you.